From the Expedition Diary of Maximilian Feuerbach, Imperial Pyromancer. The locals in the Cravenlands tell grim stories about Swords Hill. It is avoided especially at night, but the reasons are different depending on who you ask. Most tales revolve around the sounds heard in the night, and the shapes of figures occasionally silhouetted atop the hill in the moonlight. As far as facts go, wild animals and most birds avoid the eminence entirely, with the exception of the ravens, who often alight on the countless souls that decorate its slopes. I have experienced the effect of the place myself. Early in our tour here, in the Cravenlands, we learned that our horses were always uneasy when riding by Swords Hill. Some adventurous souls were brave enough to visit the hill to investigate it. Expeditions during the day have found only an eerie landscape of rusted weapons and ancient bones. The truly fearless souls are those who explore during the nighttime hours. All the stories say they never returned. As these stories became ingrained in the local lore, Swords Hill has avoided more and more, even in the daytime, and is spoken of even less. One evening, as the sun was beginning to set, we were returning to camp from a day of patrolling. We crossed a crest in the road and noticed a farm woman running across the field to the left of the road, shrieking and pointing across the road as she ran. I looked and saw a man running away from the road on the other side. He was well away from the road and headed in the direction of the fabled Swords Hill. As soon as the woman saw us approaching, she changed direction and came straight for us. Apparently, the man she was chasing had worked for her and her husband on their farm. After a dispute over pay, the now fleeing man had punched the farmer, knocking him out. Her husband was a former soldier and proud of his service, she said. But these days he was old and not the fighter he had once been. The farmhand had surprised him with the strike. But as she tended to her fallen husband, the assailant had stolen her husband's sword from where it hung above the fireplace and fled in disgrace. She implored us to help return the symbol of her husband's honor. It was the most valuable thing they possessed, along with their land. Obviously, our imperial sense of justice immediately compelled us to help this family in their plight. But furthermore, it was a perfect opportunity for us to carry favor with the local population. Surely, it would not be necessary to catch one man, but seeing our entire patrol hurtle into action to protect her family's interest must bring us some goodwill. The residents of Dusktown may have hated us, but perhaps we could make an impression on the people who were not in the loop of town politics. We assured the woman that we would return her family's sword and immediately pursued the thief across the intervening pasturage, spooking a resident herd of cattle. Perhaps he thought we would not follow, but the thief fled up Swords Hill. But we members of the Imperial military paid local superstitions no mind as we pursued our quarry in the fading daylight. As we reached the base of the hill, I ordered the electro cavalry to split up around the hill so the thief couldn't get away by changing direction in the darkness. I then led the Imperial Guard and the light infantry up the base of the hill at a march. We passed through the scattered swords embedded in the ground on our way up the slope. As we came to the top of the hill, we could not find the criminal. The electro cavalry made our way up the back of the hill to meet us, having seen no sign either. By now, the light had faded and we had only a dim partial moon to search by. But there was nowhere to hide on the hill, no cover whatsoever. Only the many swords sticking up from the ground glinting in the moonlight. In defeat and vexation, I ordered the men to return to the road. Nothing more would be discovered tonight. We would come back in the morning and find some sign by which to track and capture the wretch. All started down the slope, we heard a shriek from behind us on the hilltop we had left vacant. We all spun together and saw with shock a cloud of swirling black smoke where there had been nothing just moments before. Screaming continued to echo from the turbulent dark mass as we stood aghast for a few moments. As we stared, the black vapor began to dissipate, and I could make out a writhing, lone figure in its midst. It was the criminal we had been chasing, the stolen sword still tucked into his belt. He was clutching his chest, his eyes wide with panic in the dim moonlight, and as he shrieked and contorted in pain, his legs flailed like a man strangled. My senses finally returned to me from the depths of astonishment and dread, and I realized that he was floating several inches above the ground. As the thief writhed and clawed at his chest, a puff of the familiar black smoke appeared in front of his face. The smoke coalesced into a hand with a long, thin, skeletal finger. The hand slowly drifted towards the tortured man as he stared in horror and continued to shriek. It grasped the hilt of the sword at the victim's waist, drawing it and wielding it with a disembodied grip of sorts. And after seeming to wave the sword in his face, the hand pulled back and plunged the blade into his belly. One final mortal scream came from the thief before he slumped over. When his arms dropped to his sides, it became obvious at last why he had been ripping at his chest. A black void extending into his chest had been revealed. The shirt and surrounding skin around it shredded in his fury to extract it. From where it sat, just above the dead man's heart, the black shape began to vibrate and extend. And as it extended, I realized that it was not, in fact, extending, it was retracting. It was an arm which had been stuck into the man's chest. The wrist and finally the hand came into visibility. In skeletal fingers like the ones that had drawn the sword sat a blackened, motionless heart. Before this point, each hand was only visible to the forearm. But as our patrol watched, still paralyzed with terror, the form of each arm appeared to the elbow, then the shoulder as it became clear the arms were part of the same being. The chest, legs, and head finally took shape. The completed form was still holding up the body of the thief by the sword in his belly and holding the poor man's heart in its other hand. And from under an ornate headdress, the shade stared at us silently, with glowing red eyes. It was dead silent atop that hill, still glaring at us with hateful silence. The shape raised the sword and its occupant high in the air, holding it motionless for a moment. Then with one swift motion, the wraith flipped the sword around and drove it into the dirt of the hilltop, pinning the corpse to the ground. The impact broke the silence, but not with the sound of steel on dirt. There began a chorus of moaning and scraping all around us, punctuated with the occasional muffled clank. As the moans grew in strength, all the swords in the ground began to move at once. The ground around each one stirred and then broke apart as skeletal arms and hands burst from the dirt. Every sword transfixed the body of a now reanimated skeleton. The shade, with its continuous stare, held the blackened heart out before itself, as if showing it to us. We watched as the heart began to fall apart and blow away like ash, despite the stillness of the night air. The awful figure bowed its head for a moment, then took a step forward. And as it did so, it stepped out of the shadowy blackness that had surrounded it, revealing an ornately dressed but obviously human skeletal figure. After a few paces, the figure stopped and raised a bony finger to point directly at me. Fear coursed through me like cold fire as I looked into those glowing eyes. Though it never moved its jawbone, I knew that the booming yet hollow voice that resounded all around us belonged to this being. "You should not have come here, and you shall not leave." The swords made a horrible rasping sound as the skeletal warriors drew the weapons from their own torsos, where they had been sheathed for decades or maybe even centuries. Then behind the growing line of enemies, 3 enormous bony beasts burst from the ground. They could only have been the skeletons of great giants or the titans of lore, for they stood twice as tall and twice as broad as the rest of their human-sized cohort. This terrible battle line began to advance upon us. The sharp orders I shouted at the patrol snapped most of them back to reality, and they formed up with the fabled discipline of an imperial soldier. In the back of my mind, hope and optimism tried to beguile me. The odds were against us, but we had faced situations like this before and had been victorious. One day this could just be another glorious tale of battle. It was then that I heard the pounding of hooves coming up the other side of the hill, and the enemy line parted to show a chariot barreling towards us. Made of bones and drawn by hulking skeletal steeds, it was pointed directly at our line and closing fast. I felt the sparks jump between the tips of my fingers, and we prepared for the undead assault.
Hey, was not absolutely amazing. So I am Hyper G for Proxy Table Gaming. I'm with Lucky Sixes, of course.
Yo, Cravenlands.
Hey man, but this is even more exciting because it's not just me and thee. It is a third person. Who could it be? It's Piteglio. There he is.
You actually
How
look
are you?
sick, by the way.
Good evening,
in your black,
people.
with your black background, you look sick on this overlay.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
You know, it's our tribute to the cosmology path of magic, right?
Absolutely. How are you, my friend? Are you well?
All is good here. Big pleasure to be on the channel. I dream of being featured by a PTG production, so that's
PTG production, I like that. That should
dream.
be a thing, shouldn't it?
Just
PTGP.
Just get your payment in on time, and you can have it more. No problem.
Yeah, that subscription fee, definitely. Yep. Sweet. So what are we here for today, the three of us? Because I mean, you've seen that narrative to begin with. You've listened to it. What an awesome job that is. First of all, I should say thanks to MicDicDoc, who provided the voiceover, of course. Obviously, I shouldn't give him away because, you know, it's a narrative, you know, that kind of breaks the storyline a little bit, doesn't it? But no, many thanks to MicDicDoc, who has provided the voiceover there. Awesome job. Very much set this in motion for this contextual battle report, which we've got coming up, haven't we? And I believe you can see on screen the major overhaul topic of what this bat rep is about, which is the Cravenlands.
The Cravenlands. And
you can see them. Oh, this is a map.
You know what? I do love a map. I do love a good map.
Absolutely.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Do we? I mean, this map is amazing. I mean, Piteglio, do you want to put us into a little bit of background of the map, a little bit, or?
Yep. There is plenty of juicy details hidden here and there. This is a map made by Cagliostro Campari. That's the pen name of our friend from the forum, Mercenary Armies. Hello, Mercenary Armies, if you're watching this. And he prepared this map for this region, this peripheral region to the southeast of the Empire of Sunstal, which is plagued by a disease of the spirit, I would say. A disease of the spirit that's seeping the morale of people living there. And you will discover as the story progresses what is the reason for this unease, psychological unease that's seeping into the land. But I don't wanna give spoilers about.
Oh yes, do not go too much.
We were hoping for that actually, like exclusives.
Deep
you will have trick him into telling us.
You will have to wait and enjoy the development life, just like everybody else.
And of course, everyone can simply by going on the forum, where the Cravenlands as itself has been started for a while now. It's been going a few months now, isn't it?
Yep, indeed. It's already, I think, around the beginning of the year. And we have this collaborative campaign. So we are writing a bit of fluff, a bit of background stories, like the one that you have just heard narrated by MicDicDoc. And everybody on the forum can contribute by posting images of the units that they have painted or the terrain that they have built. We are more or less every week, we are publishing a new piece of fluff, and then we are asking people to show the miniatures that are correspondent to the units that we mention in the various pieces of fluff. And this also happens with sites. So, for example, Swords Hill that you have heard mentioned in the
Swords Hill story.
Yeah, it's this hill, as the name indicates, to the west of Dusktown, which is the main center of the Cravenlands. And we have this character, the wizard Maximilian Feuerbach, coming from the pen of Rob from RHWorldBuilding. Hello, Rob. And the wizard is, traveling around in the Cravenlands with a patrol, and meets a patrol, as you've just heard, of the Undying Dynasties. And so what we said is like, why don't we illustrate the story with a battle that we can play on the forum? And so that's just what we did. We have just played this battle over the course of maybe, I don't know, a week, 10 days, something like that. We have taken a couple of people who had done the most submissions in terms of miniatures to the campaign, and we have asked, do you want to play this battle by forum? You remember when people used to play chess by sending each other letters and saying
grid references,
B5, stuff like that. And that's the same things, like nerds are going to be nerds irrespective of the century,
Absolutely.
And there was big it wasn't just those two following, it was the whole of the rest of the people getting involved in the campaign chose a side, Team Undead, and got to we each had our own little forums and direct messages and private messages and things, and got to discuss tactics turn by turn and things like that. So that was really, really cool. So the Cravenlands, as I sense, is this really interactive campaign that you can not only follow if you just want to lurk, you can just lurk and follow it like that, or you can actually directly impact it in certain ways anyway. So yeah, as a whole, it's how you think it's gone so far?
Yeah, I'm really liking it. I've seen some submissions from people, like, both in terms of participating to the battle report, which is great. I mean, what is playing the Ninth Age is amazing. It's fun. You always have this tension whether you're doing the right thing. Doing it publicly gives you extra tension. And imagine what it is to have 10 backseat drivers telling you, like, why didn't you do this?
Impossible. And there's always the one backseat driver who doesn't say anything until after you've given the command and said, "Oh no, actually, you should have done that." Yeah, thanks. You could have been there 5 minutes ago.
I was just in there going, "Well, why haven't you charged yet? Why haven't you charged? Just charge. You've got a 12. Charge. Why haven't you charged?"
You know the kind of advice that Lucky Sixes is going to give you.
Absolutely, Speaking of charging, we need to charge on, and let's speak about the setting a little bit more, which has been hinted about, which is Swords Hill. And Swords Hill, we've got this little bit of art, which was created as well for the Cravenlands. This is Swords Hill. Piteglio, do you want to tell us a little bit more about this picture? Or, I mean, obviously this is a dwarf atop it, as opposed to the Sod style. But
you can see this dwarf apparently is the guardian of one of the towers, the old towers that are close to the Swords Hill, and he seems to be a bit of a loner. And apparently he must have some sort of shady past. And apparently we see the dwarf having a moment of relax right now at the moment in this piece of art, again from Mercenary Armies. But you can kind of suppose that what you see in the dark right there below is going to be infested by evil spirits that, wake up at night. And
this battle for Swords Hill, which obviously based on the narrative that we've heard, is going to be fought over using the rules for Essence of War, which I don't think we've necessarily mentioned yet. So Essence of War.
Well, not in
very
this
much
video,
something-
anyway.
No, not yet. No, very much something that Piteglio is very close to your heart, you could say. Something you've worked on very, very tirelessly, I should say.
Thank you. That's Freudian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which one was correct? You can decide. Yeah. So using the Essence of War rules, obviously the bat rep is of a lesser scale, you could say. But from my own personal opinion, having played a good few of these battles now, and I know Lucky Sixes, you played a few as well, it is no less stressful or no less enjoyable either.
Absolutely.
Because the amount of stuff that you can still do within Essence of War is incredible, and it really feels like you're engaged with the Ninth Age as a game, irrespective of the scale.
And if you want to know a bit more about Essence of War, because we could go on about it for ages, but if you want to know a bit more, we've got a review video, which might come up on your screen here or at the end or something. And we've also got, I don't know, about 6 live streams on our channel.
6 live streams currently. There's also Remy's video on Agonas, and he has his bat reps where he analyses all the mistakes I make. And
so what we'll do as well, we'll put Agona's channel in the link. We'll also put Veil of the Ages in the link if you want to check his stuff out. Because he's got
who's
loads
he?
of stuff.
Who's he?
I don't know.
Right.
Veil of the Ages, yeah.
Some cray mofo.
He's far too attractive to be mentioning on our channel.
Absolutely.
So should we get into the action a little bit more? Obviously the narrative gives very strong clues as to who's involved. It is the Empire of Songstyle going into battle against the Undying Dynasties. So let's have a little look at the Empire of Songstyle patrol, as it likes to be known. Piteglio, you are probably the most familiar with this. Would you like to take the lead on this group of soldiers that have come together?
With pleasure. So the general of the patrol is this wizard Maximilian Feuerbach that you just heard the story of at the very beginning. And the poor dude is left on its own after the death of the marshal of the Cravenlands, and so the poor guy has to lead this patrol in battle. So we are in this strange situation where the general of the army has discipline 7. It's going to be an interesting bit. There's also a small unit of 10 handgunners. Then there is a unit of 5 electoral cavalry, and then 15 Imperial Guards, which have strength 4. We don't have weapon options in Essence of War to keep things easy and simple, but they correspond to the sword and shield version. And another thing that we had in the past was to give 2 spells from 2 different paths to the wizard. So in this case, you have the Scorching Salvo and Corruption of Tin. So the idea is that you have a pre-made patrol. You can just take this one page, you print it out, and then you just start playing. And this is good when you want to share the game with a new friend and teach new things. So patrol is just 3 units and 1 character.
Yeah, superb. Now I mean, is there anything more you wanted to mention with Empire?
No, I was just saying this is the same concept for the one for the Undying Dynasties.
Yeah, should we put Lucky Sixes on the spot and see how much he is really Team Undead? See how he gets on. Take it away, Lucky Sixes. I mean, Piteglio probably will help you out when you get stuck, so don't worry about it too much. But go for it.
No, luckily he sort of said it's the same layout. You've got your Death Cult Hierarch, who's the spellcaster and the leader of the patrol. Some archers as well. So we've got some shooting versus shooting, and they're in the story. They're the skeletal human-sized ones being raised up. Then you've got going to the bottom, you've got the Shabti, which are the monstrous beasts being raised up after the human to strike fear in everyone. Followed very, very closely and towards the end of the narrative by the chariots. Only 2. Ninth Ages around there will normally have them as a unit of 3 normally, but Essence of War changes some of the formations and things like that, and sizes as well to make it balanced. 2 chariots coming down, but actually because you sort of look at them and sort of sometimes think, oh, there's not that's not too many. They'll easily be taken out. But the smaller sizes don't necessarily mean they're not as good, because it's very, very well balanced, if I must say so.
And plus, if you want to start playing with a new army, only needed to buy and assembly and paint too. That's, that's a comfortable thing. So.
Yeah. So you've got this undead army that's been raised up on Swords Hill using the ones that, basically the ones that the Death Cult hierarch has killed before, and raising them up using their own weapons against the Empire that have just come to get the thief. That's all they want.
Yeah,
that's all they want.
And interestingly, the Death Cult hierarch, because of his magical prowess, actually has access to 3 spells.
3 spells.
Which is kind of a cool little quirk for an Essence caster, isn't it? Which is fairly rare in Essence, really. It's quite a specialist thing.
It's quite fitting for the undead, though, because it's like two normal, quote-unquote, spells, and then the raising.
Yeah, which is very unique to the Undying Dynasties anyway. Piteglio, anything you want to add to that on the Undying Dynasty side, or are we ready to crack into deployment?
Well, I will only say one thing for your viewers, because your viewers are amazing and we love them, and then they deserve spoilers. And probably you didn't know about this either, so this is also a spoiler for PTGs.
Exclusive.
The new book for for Essence of War, which will probably be published, I don't know, next month, I should think, will have a completely rehauled magic system.
Ooh.
That is gonna be more flavorful, more interesting from the point of view of gameplay, but especially it's gonna give much more variety in terms of choices when we go to the advanced version. So the spells that you see in this battle are not necessarily the ones that will be kept for the upcoming patrols, because we've done a lot of work to make that a lot more fun in terms of
cool.
player choice. So you'll see that.
And that's a testament to the Essence of War team, actually, isn't it? That the playtesting that's going on is always looking to make it better as a game for newcomers, and also for tried and tested folk who play a lot of 9th Age. They can still enjoy it as a smaller game, irrespective of how much experience they've got with the larger version. Lovely. All right. So just quickly before we go into deployment, who was controlling who? The Empire, controlled by...
Yep, the Empire was controlled by Villon. Villon is a member of the community who's also, I suppose, on the playtesting team and on the maybe on the ID team. And he got this honor of being asked to lead the Imperial Patrol into war, because he's the one who posted a very large amount of pictures of miniatures when we said, now we are introducing the Imperial Guard, for example, or now we are introducing the Electoral Cavalry, and he was posting pictures of his own miniatures that he has in his collection. And so at the end of the presentation phase, we said, why don't you come and be the general for this thing? So we have Villon for team Empire of Sunstel, and then we have Rob from RHWorldBuilding, the one who wrote the story about Wizard Feuerbach using the Undying Dynasties, and we tripped him up because we put him to play against his own character.
Yeah.
So sometimes Hyper G knows that sometimes I like doing these things. I'm like, making you play against
evil. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great. And am I right in thinking, because the forum and the battle worked very much that one person made a decision, then they gave their answer, submitted it, waited for the next person, you kind of played host, played maestro to receiving their commands, letting them know the practicalities involved, whether it worked, whether it didn't work, and then did the roles for them. We should mention that the actual way that the battle is being presented is using Warhol, which is something that obviously is also featured on our channel very recently. And going into the first picture, which is of the deployment of the, in fact, it's the map. Let's have the map, first of all, because it was obviously demonstrated in Warhol, which is now Essence of War ready, basically, which is awesome. It's doing great. Thanks to those at Warhol for making Essence of War a thing on Warhol. And this is the map we're using. So basically it is the normal 6x4 map, only those green vertical lines sort of narrow the battlefield to make it ready for Essence of War. and obviously the forest on either side just cuts off those side areas. You've got the central scoring zone, which the units are all trying to claim, which represents Swords Hill, I guess, in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And am I right in thinking that you basically put Rob into bat first, so to speak, in that he deployed first? Oh, no, sorry, he chose his side of the battlefield. Yep. He deployed first, and he also got first turn. So that basically that represented him winning the roll-off in an essence of war game. Yeah. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all in one sweeping stroke, and we thought that it would make sense, not only because Rob is a bit more familiar with Essence of War than Villon was, for example, but also because we wanted the game to just reflect the story, and the wizard was not expecting this army of undead to crash over him. And sometimes it's nice to let players roll off a die and see who goes first, but sometimes it's also nice to do that narratively based. I think that in the Ninth Age we have to do that every now and then, just let the story play out.
And speaking about having other people watch you, now we're going to go through it and completely scrutinize every single move that both of them did. So if you didn't listen to someone, then we might scrutinize him more.
Or we might not.
I don't know. Hey, who cares?
So, based on that, we'll move over to Rob's deployment of the Undying Dynasty's forces. Lucky Sixes, your team Undying Dynasties. Tell us what you can see.
Well, as any good death cult hierarch, he raises up everything in front of him so he doesn't have to fight straight away. That's the big thing. Obviously, chariots coming straight at you, bruv, and down the centre. The Shabti on the, as we're looking at it, left, and the archers just behind the forest on the right, getting some cover and such.
Yeah, and I believe Rob's thinking was that he wanted to avoid splitting his army with the impassable terrain of the rock in the other deployment zone. And he also wanted to use the forest for cover against the handgun shooting, knowing that he didn't suffer from any movement and shooting penalties. But obviously, getting cover from the potential handgunner shot from the Empire was quite useful. That was his thinking behind picking the top deployment as well.
The only thing I would say is I would potentially have, knowing that I'm going first, trying to get that hill for some sort of like being able to see things and everything. Might have been an advantage, but yeah. Otherwise, pretty cool. Yeah, pretty sound.
Yeah, and obviously he doesn't necessarily have to worry about leadership as well, discipline, because of being undead. So
they don't care.
There's also that factor. And there, obviously, Warhol does offer us very cool images of the battlefield. So there'll be a few of these screenshots thrown in as well, just to demonstrate what's happening.
Yeah,
and we're all.
I have to say that I was trying to take informative screenshots so that people could play the game from a distance, but at the same time, I was having this good-looking stuff under my eyes, and I just couldn't help myself. I had to take screenshots.
This is the photographer in you, isn't it? You just got to get these shots. They look so cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah. So here you see the response that Villon gave for Team Empire. And speaking of comments from scrutiny from other people on the forum, this deployment was a bit debated because what you see here to the west, you have right now selected the electoral cavalry. Then to the center of the battlefield, you have the 15 Imperial Guard, and then to the east, the other side of the impassable terrain, you have the 10 handgunners with the wizard in it. And I remember that one of our friends on the forum, you know who you are, was quite adamant in saying that it was important for the wizard to be close to the hill and then jump back there and then use this 18 inches spell that can target all of the opponent army without requiring line of sight. So there would have been a very good spot to have the Imperial Wizard over there, and also that potentially the handgunners would have been a very good match to shoot at the Shaktis. So, but there was a bit of back and forth on the forum on whether this was the
healthy constructive back and forth mind.
Right, you know, that's the always polite, always sipping tea, you know, in a very well mannered way, absolutely. But yeah, so this is the deployment for the Empire.
Absolutely, and what
fully
would it be
rendered
without a nice rendered screenshot. Yeah, absolutely.
The Empire as well. Lovely job.
Yeah, and you can see old Maximilian there and his unit of handgunners. It's kind of leading the way, sort of.
It's discipline 7.
I do like that he's got one less discipline than his other units. So it doesn't matter that he's not over there giving them leadership because it wouldn't affect him anyway. I love it.
Yeah, they wouldn't pay any attention to what you're doing. Exactly, yeah. So we move into Undying Dynasty's first turn, which obviously Rob knew that he had when he deployed. And by the counter, the Empire forces knew that they didn't have first turn when they deployed. And so we have the Shabtis moving 6 inches straight forward, which gave them a potential charge. Gave a potential charge to the electoral cavalry.
Aggro Shabti.
Yeah, they were potentially risking it. The skeleton archers moved their full advance rate into the forest to get the cover that was mentioned as the plan. And Rob decided not to move the skeleton chariots at all. He wanted to keep them back for the time being. But he did move the hierarch in between the Shabtis and the chariots. That was his turn.
I think that was
movement.
A range issue.
Yes, I believe so. Although, as it turned out, that does lead us nicely into Magic, because I believe either by design, because he didn't want to leave himself vulnerable, or by error, I'll leave that up to other people to debate. He went into Magic, rolled the Flux card 1, which gave him 3 dice and the reactive player 2 dice, not that many, and decided not to cast anything. I believe that was because A, he didn't need to, and or he'd messed up his ranges.
That's a power play. Say, look, I don't even need I'm undead dynasty. I don't even need my magic. I'm going to beat you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's power play.
The thinking behind that was he didn't need to move his shooting with Dance Macabre. He had no one to raise because he hadn't lost anyone. And his other spell, Fate's Judgment, I believe, was out of range. Am I right? Was it Fate's Judgment? It was, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, he got the lowest Flux card and didn't need to cast anything. So it was a good time to get the lowest Flux card, really. So yeah,
that's a homage to Whispers of the Vale podcast, by the way, and Trent's power plays.
Absolutely, yeah, plenty of them going around.
Yeah.
Into shooting, the archers take shots at the handgunners straight in front of them.
Absolutely.
Actually, before we talk about that, let's have a little look at the skeletons eyeing up their target. Over in the forest, they are, and they're shooting towards the handgunners on the left side of that rock. And
I love that the grass is bigger than them.
It's long grass.
Don't step into the long grass.
That's definitely. And they managed to cause 1 casualty on the handgunners, which is better than nothing. You know, I mean, obviously the skeleton archers are hitting on 5s, as they always are, wounding on 4s. I don't think the handgunners have any armor, so a decent result, not above average, but not as bad as it could have been. So
just 1 more undead to raise.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. And so, one thing that you did as host throughout the battle, Piteglio, which I thought, reading through the forum, was an excellent work from yourself, making it as easy as possible for both players to play this game and enjoy themselves, was that in between turns, or indeed at any point of the battle where they might require it, you provided these very useful indicators of distances and or charge arcs, etc. Anything that they would need, knowing that they couldn't physically interact with the battlefield themselves because it was in your save file. You were the only one who had access to it. But you demonstrated it by providing this information to them, which I thought was excellent, and it made the game flow really well. So massive props to you there.
Yeah, Warhol makes it quite easier than it would be like, if you were to play the game in normal life, because you can put this rulers here and show things. I remember that some 10 years ago I was trying to do something similar with my friends because I had moved to a different country, and so we would play a different war game from the past. I would put that on the table, and then I would hang my my webcam from the computer to the ceiling, and then I would show things. But it wasn't as easy as just like, putting a digital ruler on the field and just like extending it to the thing. So this was very enjoyable and very easy compared to what it could have been. So
absolutely.
There's a part of me that would have liked to see that though.
It was very vintage. There was always an ashtray and a glass on the battlefield as
Absolutely.
well. So just to say, if you guys want to play remotely with your friends nowadays, that's totally possible. It doesn't take too much effort.
Yeah.
So you can see here jumping into the movement phase because there were no charges, I suppose.
Yeah, he turned down the 10-inch electoral cavalry charge on the shaft. He didn't fancy it for reasons, and just moved them forward instead onto the hill, which again, it got quite a lot of debate in the forum chat, didn't it? A lot of it was going back to the somewhat not ideal deployment, I think is probably the nicest way of putting it, maybe.
They were caught off guard.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, didn't expect the undead to be on the hill, did they? He did also move the Imperial Guards towards the hill, not onto the hill, should be noted. And the handgunners were forced to move forward a little bit. Were they forced to, or could they not? Could they not shoot from where they were? What was
I think
the
that
thinking
they
behind
tried to advance, but then there were just too many modifiers. And then after Villon declared this movement, I checked, like, do you want to push them forward a little bit more, because you will still be not hitting anyway. Because so aim for long range, you move. They are in a in cover, so that means that you cannot shoot them because you don't have a 7+ to hit in essence. So after I told him this little difference, then probably he moved them a bit forwards. Maybe you'll see that in one of the next pictures.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Beautiful.
Cinematic view. I quite like that we've got a cinematic for everything.
There's somebody on the Polish forum when I posted a picture from Warhol said, like, this is amazing. This looks like completely like an episode from the Teletubbies. I was like, battle for Swords Hill in the night with the undead, and then it looks like an episode.
Just need my face in a sun, right? I'd do that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You mean you weren't the son in Teletubbies?
Well, no, I was, but then they sacked me off after the bid.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you grew that at age 3, so you couldn't really complain.
It was acting faux pas on my part.
Yeah, I've kind of skipped the Empire Magic phase and gone a spoiler alert, so I'll go quickly back to that one, because on the Magic phase for Empire, it didn't turn out to be anything productive anyway, because Villon tried to 4 dice Corruption of Tin into the Shaptis, but because the reactive player had 4 dice as well, so that was actually the active player only used 4 out of their 5 dice, trying not to get to miscast. It meant that the dice were even, and it was dispelled on a roll slightly higher, so Corruption of Tin didn't get cast in Magic. Which meant that the Undying Dynasties were free to act in their turn.
So charge.
Team Lucky Sixes, Team Undying Dynasties came to the fore. And go for it, Lucky Sixes.
They charged.
Yeah, they did, pretty much. Happy. Yeah, I mean, this shows movement as well.
Yeah.
So you've also got the
chariots. I mean, just turn in. Don't want too much. Don't worry about it. But as well, being there, that the wizard can't see him, see our wizard as well. So that could help.
Yeah, and also you've got the chariots moving forward as well, stating their intent to get involved in the battle.
Yeah.
Too. Obviously, there was another debate in the charge reaction of the cavalry as to whether or not they should take the charge from the Shaptis or flee. Obviously, the final decision was to hold. Empire going down
It's like-
swinging, or at least
Yeah, cat. When cat's eyes sort of thing. Just like stood there. What's the thing? No, I don't
caught
know.
in headlights.
Caught in the headlights. That's it.
There you go.
Sorry, I'll carry on drinking.
Yeah, you need more alcohol, definitely. And you can't see because of the forest, but the skeleton archers have also moved forwards 4 inches as well. There you go. And in the magic phase for Undying Dynasties, there's just the action shot of the charge. You had a few more dice available for the Undying Dynasties. I believe that the wizard, the hierarch, went with Fate's Judgment with 5 dice, deciding to throw caution to the wind. Managed to cast it, as you would expect, with 5 dice. Did not get a miscast, and the dispel attempt with 4 dice was failed. Now, obviously, that is potentially pretty scary. It's D3 hits with the Fate's Judgment in Essence of War. It does wound automatically. It was targeting the Imperial Guard as the only valid target because the handgunners were out of range. Because Fate's Judgment is an 18-inch range. And it caused 1 Imperial Guard to die. Because, I mean...
Every little helps.
Yeah, I mean, Fate's Judgment doesn't alter your armor save, and Imperial Guard have 4 up armor. So, it's not going to blitz through the entire unit, but then nothing is supposed to, in Essence of War, is it? It's supposed to be a chipping away kind of effect, isn't it, really? And yeah, 1 Imperial Guard went down. But even then, that's still very useful in the context of the sizes of the units in Essence of War. Going into shooting, the archers in the forest, the skeleton archers, continue their job on the handgunners and kill 1 more.
Plink, plink.
So, yeah, plinking away. And obviously the Empire are not going to get any models coming back.
They can't raise. Biatch.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure we don't skip too far ahead on the pictures. Going into the melee. Now, Lucky Sixes, you are obviously very passionate about these Shabtis getting the charge off. Do you recall what happened in the combat? That might give you a bit of a clue.
The picture helps. We demolished them. We tore them apart, mate. Not even funny.
Yeah.
But it was funny.
I know the cavalry, obviously, they do have a 1-up armor save, I believe. However, what they also have,
2, yeah.
which...
Armor 5, yeah.
Which is obviously quite a crucial factor, is they have great weapons, or the equivalent of, in Essence of War, which is high strength but low agility.
Yeah.
And that meant that they had to basically just take whatever was coming at them before they could do anything. As it happens, the 9 attacks of the Shabtis, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, and modifying that 2-up armor save to a 4-up armor save. Unfortunately, for the Empire side, it meant 4 dead cavalry.
Probably why the charge didn't look that appealing as well, even beforehand, because there's their agility 0 anyway. So
yeah. And I actually wrote down a quote from a certain onlooker who may be involved in this particular battle report. Yes to the Shabti, doing the work the chariots could only dream of. Empire should flee now while they still have the chance.
That's sound advice, actually.
Who said that?
I don't know, but some legend. It sounds like a legend, to be honest. It sounds like someone I'd get on with.
Yeah, maybe. So yes, and the cavalry, the electric cavalry, were quite a way down on their discipline test, their break test.
I may have been drinking that night as well.
They subsequently fled, of course. And not all that far, in fact, because the Shabti did not pursue them. They decided to pivot around towards the central zone, feeling that their work was done.
This was an interesting move because it's in this type of game where you only win by scoring and having scoring a non-fleeing unit within 6 inches from the center of the battlefield. You want, and the game only lasts 4 turns. You don't wanna get too far away from that area where everything is happening. So I understand the idea of pivoting and not leaving not leaving the central part where everything is going to happen. But at the same time, you don't get points for a half destroyed unit. And, you know, even a single model can still, you know, the lone knight that's fleeing towards the right, if, you know, if it rallies, then he can still play a role in there. So it's a tough decision. And as Fear the Ham said after playing one of the latest games, it's like it's deceptively deep. Every single question, that single thing that happens has so many ramifications. And so, you know, you have to think about whether you want to do A or B. So yeah, in this case, not allowing the Imperial Guard to have a flank charge, or not getting it out of the central zone of the battle.
Absolutely. And speaking of charges, going into the Empire turn, it was obviously somewhat a disaster to lose the cavalry at such an early stage. So in some ways, they needed to react, and react they did by, in their turn 2, declaring a charge of their own with the Imperial Guard. Not on the Shabtis, though. They went this way instead.
What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love this move. When I was looking at the battlefield, I was like, please have somebody declare their charge, please. Yeah. Because, you know, Rob had prepared things very nicely. It's like 15 Imperial Guard, unless they deal all 9 wounds, even with the crumble. You know, you have the charge and you have 2 ranks, so you're already winning by 3. But, you know, you have to make 3 other wounds, and you have to get fewer than 3 wounds in return to completely pop the Shabtis units. Otherwise, those chariots are going to slam into the rear of the Imperial Guard. It's going to be very ugly. And so it was the way that the Empire has set the turn, by angling the Imperial Guard like that. But this was going to put the Imperial Guard out of line of sight from the other units. It would have given them a chance to, you know, beat a unit that's easy to beat in combat and then get ready for the next thing. So it was a very, very nice move. Yeah, and man. One of the people following the battle, not Villon himself, I think it was Ivor K. Hi, Ivor. Ivor is an amazing guy who's contributing the most beautiful pieces of scenery for the Cravenlands battle. He's well on the way for being the leader for the next Play-by Forum battle. I would wish something on that dude getting the marshal office. Ooh, and wow. You know, he suggested, why don't you do that instead? And I think it was a brilliant move. I really like that.
But will it turn out well, is the question.
Let's see.
We will find out. In the rest of the movement phase, the Electoral Cavalry, the single model, failed his rally test, didn't he? However, it wasn't all disaster, because he only fled 4 inches and maintained on the board.
He's still there.
And yeah,
screaming like a little girl.
Could be quite crucial, though.
Looking at the monster through the through the gap in the fingers, it's like, oh my god, this is scary. Yeah. But, you know, I'm not gonna flee away all that much.
Looking for a couch to hide behind.
Absolutely. And into the handgunners with Maximilian decided to stay put, because they now had a position which they liked, i.e. they could shoot at whatever they wanted without moving, which is obviously crucial for handgunners. Who are already hitting on 4s, you know, not moving, or moving and moving it to 5s is tricky. But when you're at long range anyway, if you can avoid moving, that's as good as you can get, really. And they decided to stay put, knowing that they had the Shabtis in line of sight. Magic-wise, there were 5 dice available to a very meager 2 for the reactive player. So a big phase for Empire Magic, which is very timely. They went with, I say they, I mean, you know, Villon, or with council, I guess, went with corruption of tin on the Shabtis to reduce their armor, knowing that they were about to be shot at, basically. He tried to cast it on 1 dice, which is obviously a little bit risky, but he knew what he wanted to do with the remainder of his dice, obviously. And Rob, knowing that he only had 2 dice to a potential 4 coming up for the second spell, decided to use both his dispel dice to dispel it, which is the right move. You know, you're not realistically going to dispel with only 2 dice against 4. So he got rid of corruption of tin with his 2, and without any surprises, Scorching Salvo was to follow, cast with all 4 dice. It got 4 hits, which is obviously awesome. I haven't written down who the 4 hits were on, in fact.
Scorching Salvo is everyone, isn't it?
Oh, so yeah, I think Scorching Salvo,
Everyone
only the Shabties were in range, which is why it was only one lot of hits.
Yeah.
So he got 4 hits, which is the most Scorching Salvo can do. Only did 1 wound, though, wounding on a 4-up. And the Shabties managed to pass their armor. So the fact that it was 4 dice Scorching Salvo and there was no Dispel dice made no difference. They passed their armor. The handgunners opened up on the Shabties as well. Obviously, this is where Corruption of Tin not getting cast made the difference, really.
Yeah.
And the handgunners decided to get all sharpshooter, and they got 7 shots with 7 remaining that there were, and 5 of them managed to hit on 5 ups, which is very good. However, it was the wounding that was the problem. Only 1 of those wounded. And this time the armor didn't quite pay off. And 1 wound was done to the Shabties.
But what's that? Hey? To a raising undead army. Pff, we laugh at that.
There you go. So you can just see there, I've just got slightly overexcited with the pictures and not moved it on. But I think this is... oh, no. That's, I think
so this has gone
a
into...
bit too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's...
overview?
Yeah, I think the next picture might be something to do with... I think it was discussion over whether or not the handgunners should move forward or shoot at this point. And they decided, obviously, to not move forward. Yes, that was a decision as to whether or not to get in range of Scorching Salvo for everything, I think.
Yeah.
So this is very much Piteglio, as host, letting people know their options before making their decision.
Yeah.
Which, as I say, is very
a hypothetical picture.
Absolutely.
But it never happened.
It never happened, and that meant that the handgunners opened up on the Shabties.
Most
of them aiming towards the chariots, but managing to wound the Shabties. So
there's a lot of wind.
Nice work there.
There's a lot of wind in the Cravenlands. It just blew it over.
Absolutely. And as we have Lucky Sixes cheering the banner for Undying Dynasties, Piteglio, would you like to take us through the subsequent combat between the Imperial Guard and those skeleton archers?
This was let the Empire have a moment of glory. So you see here 7 wounds caused by the Imperial Guard and none in return. And given the way that the Undying Dynasties work, they never flee, of course, like that as they're skeletons. So, but I think that this is after the fact. So this is the Imperial Guard managed to cause 7 wounds in total. It wasn't
including Crumble.
It was including the Crumble. So the point is that
they did 2. Did they? 2 wounds.
They killed 2.
Yeah.
They killed 2.
I think it was 2, none in return, and then you have +1 for the charge, and then +2 for the
ranks.
For the ranks. So that means that there's 5 more skeletons dying, but crucially, 3 skeletons remain there.
Yeah.
So that means that the Imperial Guard is not going anywhere. It's not destroying the units. It's not pushing through the woods and overrunning, pursuing. It's not even pivoting the way that the Shabties have pivoted after breaking the cavalry. And so here they are in this position.
But that's not terrible for the Empire, because this is on their turn. Obviously, they got 1 more turn left.
Yeah, that's they still have a chance, to get things done. So
the Empire have got 2 more turns left.
Sorry, yeah.
They went second, but
And especially the chariots are angled in a way that was ready to come into action should the Imperial Guards charge the Shabties. The chariots were not imagining that the Imperial Guards would go against the archers, and that's why it was such a good move.
Yeah,
to get out of the
agreed.
But obviously the Shabties, they did have an option, and they duly took it. And took it well. They did. They charged into the flank of the Imperial Guard to avenge those fallen skeletons.
Can you imagine 3 beasts like that in the flank? Flank charges are very nasty. You get a +2 bonus just for charging in flank plus the rank. So, that's tough. What is going to happen, Hyper G? What is going to happen?
Yes, it is. It is. Expect it at your own peril, or fail to expect it at your own peril, I should say. And the skeleton chariots, obviously a little bit disgruntled that they weren't able to get into the action straight away. They wheeled very much towards the action, which led us nicely into the Undying Dynasty's turn 3. It should be noted this is turn 3 now.
Yeah, getting
3 or 4. So we are vastly approaching the important stage. They actually got the magic card with 7 active dice to the opponent's 4 reactive, which is pretty good.
I think that what happened just before this picture that you see here is that the Imperial Guards did manage to get rid of the skeletons.
Oh, okay.
This is actually into the Empire.
Of skips.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you're showing the movement, but also, massively mad in combat where the Shabtis went in, and if you go back, I think you can see the rolls. I think we've got the exact rolls, which is just insane. So like the 9 attacks, 9d6, hitting on 4s, I think it was, and then wounding on 2s, and then it was armor saved.
Yeah, 0 wounds, and I was rolling these dice, and I was like, I'm doing the report for everybody, and nobody is ever gonna believe that I rolled 0 wounds. Everybody's gonna think that I'm rooting for the Empire. So I said, this picture is gonna have a screenshot of the dice rolls because it was amazing.
It's impressive. How long were you there before you got this exact roll?
I spent 2 hours and a half.
Making sure the Shabtis didn't go down, absolutely. So just to catch up on shooting, Death is Only the Beginning was cast on the Shabtis to recover their wounds prior to that combat as well. We've already spoken about the melee, so absolutely awesome. And bearing in mind with the picture that I've already kind of spoiled, we had the Imperial Guard managing to reform to face the Shabtis.
Wiped out the archers.
There was an interesting moment here. So also for the people who are learning the Ninth Age through Essence of War, Rob, as the Undying Dynasty's general, was thinking like, should I raise the archers again and make them fight? And that was one of the moments where the backseat drivers were, don't do that.
You killed the Shabtis.
Because it would have given, the way the crumbling mechanism worked, it would have given easy bodies to kill to the Imperial Guards, and then the Shabtis would have suffered from that as well. So it was really nice to see that, Rob doesn't play with Undying Dynasties that much. So it was a good learning moment. This whole Cravenlands thing is done for people to get into the hobby. You have the miniatures, you have the story, you have the simplified version, you have everybody talking about you should do this, you shouldn't do this. So if you know of somebody who's interested in learning the Ninth Age, that's a good place to start. There's a lot to be learned in terms of gameplay.
For sure.
Absolutely. And so the handgunners elected not to make this charge, based on what you've said. Really,
not to save his buddies.
Yeah, absolutely. See how the Imperial Guard got on off camera, or at least up until this point. The cavalry rally.
Oh, can't believe it. Can't believe it.
I mean, that could be a game changer right there. Because all of a sudden, with one turn remaining to move, the Empire Cavalryman is back in the action. And as you can see from that distance, he's in range of a certain blue circle. So potentially a problem for the Undying Dynasties. In Magic, you had Scorching Salvo was cast, with a miscast, in fact. But it was, in fact, dispelled. 4 dice miscast. 222, and it was dispelled by just 2 dispel dice. So the miscast didn't take effect, or does it take effect even with them?
It does not. If the spell is dispelled, it does not.
Yeah,
but
sure.
as you can see here from the blue line in the distance around the wizard, the death cult hierarch was within the range of the scorching salvo,
Yeah.
and you don't want to lose your general as a UD player.
No.
So for as much as Rob wanted the Empire Wizard to get a miscast, you cannot risk to have the
Yeah.
your general
Absolutely.
in trouble.
Yeah.
Shooting wise,
Say
the handgunners didn't manage to seize on shooting the chariots either. So obviously that wasn't great considering they declined getting into combat. But nonetheless, we then moved into the main event really of the turn, which was the combat. I think we've got the dice rolls again here. Let's see what we've got. I mean, pick through that, guys.
So this was like opposites day. The Shabty went to town, man, and
2 more hours of rolling.
yeah, right, yeah, just to make up for what you've done. That's what it was. But yeah, the Shabties went to town. I think they did 5 wounds.
9 attacks, 7 hits, 6 wound, 1 saved equals 5 dead Imperial Guard. I've got written down there.
So they did 5 wounds, and then I want to say 1 in return.
1 dead Shabti, so 3 wounds done.
Oh, 3 wounds.
Yeah.
Oh, they already had 2 on it, so.
Yes, 2 wounds. 2 wounds was already done.
So did the 1 to kill it, but obviously major win for the Shabti. 5 to 1. The what's it called Empire chaps only had 1 rank after that as well, so we're testing.
Yeah, for the Empire at Discipline 8, which was passed according to
The very last
what I've written down. Yeah, and I got another quote from another person who's involved in this battle report. Someone else was known to say, "Brutal."
Those dice were really, really stringy. But it felt right in the end that the Imperial Guard would stick, because it has an extra rank and it's going to be testing at an unmodified discipline of 8. So it's like it does make sense that they're there. But it was nice to see 5 guards dying and 1 Shabti being pulled off.
Yeah, this is the way it was meant to go the first time round.
Yeah, bloody.
Yeah, man.
And things happening with the way space is made available. For fit in.
So one of the big things was obviously with that guy going down, it actually meant that the chariots could get into combat if they wanted to, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Yeah, with the trouble is with only 1 turn of movement left, a lot of discussion. I remember this bit specifically. There was so much discussion on what to do, because obviously if the handgunners get in and for whatever reason the Imperial Guard don't die, then they've got potentially 2 and then 3 with the Electoral Cav. We've only got 2 maximum scoring. There's a lot of tactics in this last one for sure.
Yeah, especially with that cavalry still being an issue.
Yeah.
Make for a 3rd Empire unit being available. And this picture in particular is a good one because it shows a certain purple skeleton dude lurking in the forest, who also potentially had a charge. And thanks to host Piteglio, you did advise that both were auto charges, so there wasn't even a dice roll that affected their ability to charge the Undying Dynasties. They could both automatically get in here. And,
I didn't want to roll dice anymore,
No, absolutely. And they took it. And I've kind of jumped the gun a little bit with the casualties. But there we go. The charge
couldn't risk them surviving. The Imperial Guard were the ones we had to kill.
Yeah, I mean, this was interesting. It's like, I don't want to rehash all the debate that we had on the forum, but imagine those chariots where they were the turn before. So immediately at the northwest corner of this blue circle put in. Imagine them crossing through crossing through the diameter of that circle and being to the other side. And you also have a Dance Macabre. So the point is that you could place those chariots dead in front of the handgunners, and stop the handgunners from walking into the zone. But if then you manage to win the combat against the Imperial Guard, then you would have your 2 units, and then maybe the Knights can get in. So this point of the battle, turn 3 in Essence of War, is always like a very interesting turn, because you have this thing like, I want to crush mine, I want to kill that unit, I want to bring everybody and just mow them. But at the same time,
me, by the way.
That feeling.
Charge them!
get that. I want to see dead guards. But at the same time, that's not how you win. And so this is one of those places where, the players who know fantasy battles, they will say, I'm going to get points. I'm going to get points for the units. So sometimes somebody who's coming from Essence of War can also have fun, because they can do the smart thing if you look at things from an Essence of War perspective. So it's not mindless, let's say. Bam, Chariots in,
and they start smashing. Because obviously they do have the impact hits, which obviously makes a big difference when it comes to agility order.
Yeah, the other thought behind this as well was, if we get the Death Cult Hierarchy in, who's not in there to smash them up, but mainly combat res and such, then we also have a different direction to do stuff in. To make if the Imperial Guard do go away and flee, whatever, we've got different directions that we can either go right or we can go down. So west or south, sorry.
Yeah. And now that did mean that as a result of the carnage that the Undying Dynasties did to the Imperial Guard, there wasn't any opportunity for them to pass a discipline test and hold this time around, and so they were fleeing. Basically, the Imperial Guard put up a fight, but it wasn't quite good enough, and so it was very much like Lucky Sixes has said, up to Rob to determine which direction the Imperial Guard were going to go. Bearing in mind, of course, that Empire had another turn to potentially rally and or move units, which is it's a massive decision to make at this stage.
You have 2, you can go by fluff, because you have 2 huge chariots, 2 massive big wars, and 1 purple skeleton. In which direction do you flee?
Yeah, right. Well, the purple guy's raising everyone up, so that's obviously him.
Yeah, and here it was on the floor.
Cinematic.
Looking at obviously those 6 in the foreground of Imperial Guard are very much dead bodies, ready to be raised at a later date, no doubt. Hopefully not quite as skillful as they were in life. And which direction did Rob choose to make the remaining 3 Imperial Guard go? He chose south.
Yeah.
And as you can see, that's an interesting place for them to flee to. The Hierarch fails to run them down by 1 inch, I believe, which is crazy in itself. But yeah, the Imperial Guard has stopped just inside the scoring zone, but obviously they are currently fleeing. So in their state of fleeing, they cannot claim the scoring zone, but the Empire does have rally. 1 more turn to rally, which will make them just as effective as if they were standing there to begin with. So,
and also, but what's going to happen with the fleeing from the purple dude? Of course, makes a lot of sense. But they could also get in the way of the handgunners and preventing them from getting there. So this part was a very good move from Rob to make them flee in that direction, because they could have just ended outside of the victory zone and in front of the handgunners. It would have been amazing for the Undying Dynasties, but no, the handgunners still have time to move over there, and they can still rally.
Yeah, and it should be noted as well, because this is something that has scuppered me on more than one occasion, right, Piteglio, that the handgunners were not within 6 inches of the fleeing Imperial Guard when they failed that break test, so there was no panic involved. That's good generalship. I should take notes. But we were going into Empire.
Or take UD, because then it can.
I'll take UD. I've tried that as well, though. I failed with them too. So, hey. That wasn't Piteglio's fault, but, we won't go there. So, into Empire Turn 4, which is massive because, Rob for UD has done everything he can now. It's all in Empire's hands, or mostly, as to how can he salvage this situation. Rob has got 2 UD units within the scoring zone. Currently, at the state of play before Empire turn 4, Villon did not have any because of the Imperial Guard fleeing. He needed to get 2 into the zone or reduce the amount of Undying Dynasties in there. How was he going to do that? But of course, the first thing is charges, and then it's rallying. So did he declare any charges? Can anyone remember?
No, that couldn't have happened because there wasn't, good.
There was no room, correct. The cavalry was too far and the handgunners were being blocked by the Imperial Guard.
No.
Absolutely. So that was a trick question. Neither of you fell into it. I'm pleased. Well done.
Yeah, we're on it.
Yeah. But of course, the Imperial Guard looked towards old Maximilian for some discipline to help them rally. Did they find discipline there? No, they did not. They had to use their own resolve.
Why would they?
Absolutely. But did they pass their Discipline 8 leadership test? No, they did not. They were running, and crucially, they were running just far enough to clear the handgunners, and also not clipping them on the way through, which would have potentially caused a panic test as well. They ran past them, which I don't know. I mean, is that ideal scenario? Could the handgunners have got into the zone if the Imperial Guard had rallied, or was there not enough room?
I think it could have been possible by angling them in a in a particular way. So by being unlucky that you keep on fleeing, at least you were lucky. I mean, you Empire concept that they didn't stop right in front of the handgun. So it's a dice game,
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
dice give
decide it all.
Yeah, and that did mean that in terms of magic, there wasn't a great deal of. In fact, I think there was 0 chance that Maximilian could cause the Undying Dynasty's units to disappear. They just simply didn't have the damage potential. So there was nothing that, other than charging, which was obviously impossible. There was no way that the Undying Dynasties could have less than 2 units in the scoring zone, which meant that it was all about the Empire's movement phase. And obviously now knowing the Imperial Guard are there, it was just up to the handgunners and the cavalry to move on in.
Bring the cavalry.
Move on in they did.
Yep.
And this was the final state of play, I believe. I've got another picture. I'm not quite sure why. It's probably the same as this one.
Show it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wounds, apparently.
Yeah, a few scorching salvos, I think, wasn't it? Just for funsies.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah, but it doesn't take the Obshukti out because both models were still in the scoring zone.
And or the Death Cult High Rock for fluff reasons.
Yes, exactly, yes. And there we go. That is how the battle ended, with 2 units from each side in the scoring zone, which suggests maybe that neither side won, but neither side lost. There you go. Think of it how you will. Are you half full or half empty? What do you reckon, folks?
Charge!
Yeah. I mean, both the UD units are facing the wrong way now, so neither of them would have been able to charge if there was a turn 5. But yeah. Cool. That endeth the battle for Swords Hill, or at least at this stage of the narrative. But I believe it is far from over.
An urgent message to High Marshal Lucas Jaeger. By now you have read my accompanying account of the battle at Swords Hill. To this point we had returned many of our reanimated foes to the earth, but in the process we have taken losses that would cripple our ability to patrol the Cravenlands. Both sides were now depleted to just a fraction of their fighting strength. But our Imperial Guard were crippled and fleeing for a chance to regroup, and the Electro Cavalry have been eliminated save for one lone man, who had barely circled back to the battle after having beat a brief tactical retreat. The enemy, however, still possessed both of its chariots and 2 of its hulking skeletal monstrosities, which I could only place in wild mythology. Continuing to fight the undead before us could rid them from the world, but risk the lives of our remaining men. Alas, the honor of an Imperialist soldier left us with only one option. To destroy the Scourge, even if it meant dying to a man on this hill. A fear-frenzied warning in the darkest parts of my imagination reminded me of our fate should we fail to extricate the presence of evil from this place. We would become so many more nameless, sword-marked graves on this forsaken hill, lying in wait, destined to rattle forth from the ground to fight the next poor souls to venture into this place on the wrong night. Fighting forever with the swords that took life from us forever and left us only with undeath. Through a gap in the chaos, my gaze found the soulless eyes of the head-dressed enemy leader. If a skeletal face could smirk with self-satisfaction, that was the look it gave me. Dead-eyed smugness stared back at me as I ordered the handgunners around me to ready another volley in cover of the Imperial Guard. As they reloaded, however, the hierarch of the dead paused and bowed his head. I knew what was coming. It had seemed the same action produced terrible tactical effects on the battlefield. We braced ourselves, the shaken men fumbling to charge their weapons. From the ground we heard a familiar rumbling chorus, but this time it came from all around us. I could only surmise that we were mere moments from being hopelessly surrounded by skeletal enemies. As soon as the fiend leading the enemy finished its spell, all was certainly lost for us. In the moment when the very light that Sunna shone upon us seemed to be fading, I heard a sound from behind me. It was a din of triumphant shouts, clanging weapons, and hurried footfalls. At first I thought it was the remnants of the Imperial Guard returning to the fray, but the sound crescendoed to a height that could not be produced by only a few men, however brave they might be. I turned to face the approaching tumult, worrying that it may be another enemy force ambushing us when we were at our most vulnerable. What I actually saw was even more unbelievable than engaging in daredevil combat. I turned to see a column of men that must have been at least 50 strong, wearing dark-colored robes. Some of them were lightly armored at best, and they were collectively armed with a mix of actual weapons and what appeared to be modified farm implements. But the fury of their onrush was beyond fear, beyond what training can provide to mere normal men. Before being snatched back to the reality of the situation, I briefly imagined their savagery as akin only to that of the bestial bands that has attacked us that one black night months ago. But there was no time for idle thought when a final chance for survival had presented itself to us. In the moment that my focus returned to me, I saw the leader of this ferocious rebel, and my heart sank once again. He charged towards the undead sorcerer, plate armor reflecting red gleams from the still burning skeletons and other scattered remnants of my pyromancy spells. With a great overhand swing, the figure hurled his massive battle hammer at the concentrating death cultist, who shattered into a swirl of greyish dust as the weapon crushed his ornamented skull. In that moment, the rumble from the ground stopped. Apparently, the enemy had not been able to reanimate any more of his skeletal comrades before his demise. In the middle of a step, Heinrich von Tottenhammer, High Prelate of the Cravenlands, picked up his battle hammer from where the hierarch had fallen and continued into the face of the 2 huge skeletal hulks that still remained. As his retinue tore apart the chariots and their skeleton crews, Tottenhammer battled single-handedly with the pair of monstrosities. He parried attacks from their massive weapons and landed shattering blows against them until they were nothing more but debris on the trampled ground. Tottenhammer was breathing hard and wiping the dust of the grave from his face, but he looked triumphant. He strode over to where he had watched in amazement the zealous storm unfold before us. When he addressed us, his face had taken on the human version. Same smugness I had recognized in the undead commander. Noble soldiers of the Empire, it has been our honor to assist you in banishing this wretchedness from our land. No gratitude is necessary, as Suna demands we eradicate abominations to her light wherever we find them. His mocking tone set my teeth on edge from the minute he called us noble. I was about to tell him where he could keep his honor. But as soon as he finished speaking, he started walking back in the direction whence he had entered the battle, with his mob following obediently behind him. Too exhausted to sustain my shock, I ordered our ever-dwindling patrol to prepare for departure from this cursed place. We limped back to camp and tended our wounds. In the following days, our intelligence network in Dusttown reported the streets were awash with stories of how the High Prelate and his men had saved a helpless Imperial detachment from the clutches of the evil entities that lived atop Swords Hill. I was insulted by the tone of these stories, as I had been by the man's tone in person. Though in my heart, I could not but admit that his arrival had saved us from an unspeakable fate. We even heard from our agents that Totenhammer had made a public speech a few days after our battle at Swords Hill, and that in the wake of their glorious victory he had decided to shine Suna's light against that of other sinister forces plaguing this land. For the Empire and the foreign forces they had sent into the Cravenlands were not capable of their task. So you see, my Lord Marshal Jaeger, this situation quickly turned from a golden opportunity to improve relations with the locals to a moral imperative to eradicate an undead infestation, to a stunning political defeat in favor of our remaining enemy. The threat that Heinrich von Totenhammer presents in this region will only grow as he continues to disparage the Empire to solidify his position of power. I urge you to hasten the process of reinforcing the Cravenlands with fresh troops and appointing a new marshal for the region. The need here for leadership above and beyond my own abilities has never been more immediate or dire. Maximilian Feuerbach, Pyromancer of the Imperial Army.
Ooh, wow. That was another awesome episode narrated from MicDicDoc. Thank you very much for
big shout out to him. You might find him on Magnet Radio on occasion, and obviously big friends with them as well. So thank you very much for that. Piteglio, thanks very much for coming on to do Bat Rep with us, man.
It was such a huge pleasure to be here, and we've enjoyed the Cravenlands content on the forum very much.
Yeah,
but
man.
seeing it, like, in a video is also very, very enjoyable.
Yeah,
I hope that we're gonna have more Cravenland content not only on the forum but also in this format.
Absolutely.
I enjoy this very much.
And
always welcome.
And the biggest thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. Like Piteglio said, there's probably going to be some more Cravenland stuff on our channel. So if you do like this video and if you've lasted till the end, get yourself another beer, my son, because that was a good video to watch.
And then once you've got the beer, watch it again.
Watch it again. Like, share, subscribe.
Definitely.
Tell your friends. Add in the comments as well, telling us about what you thought of the video, what you thought of the battle, War Hall, Cravenlands, whatever. But more importantly, probably for this, check out Veil of the Ages, check out Forum. All the links going to be below, and I'll probably put something up while I'm talking as well. But yeah, it's really, really fun, really interactive, loads for anybody in terms of what your niche is in the hobby.
Yeah.
So if you're into just painting models, then great. If you're into painting terrain, great. If you're into showing off what you've already painted, great. If you're into doing bat reps and videos and all that stuff, you can literally do anything to get involved.
And also with Essence, it doesn't matter how much experience you've got. You can learn the game with Essence, or you can play the game. Even if you've got experience, you can play Essence.
Yeah, exactly.
And the game's developing as we go.
Piteglio is very much the man on Essence, and there's a whole Discord and a whole like your whole channel and your Twitch. We should point people towards your Twitch as well. Valley of the Ages, which has all the. So you might have seen the streams on our channel. Literally that, but way more and way more people. So we're just very selfish. And just have our own ones. So, but yeah, so check out all of that, guys. And yeah, thanks very much for not only you, Piteglio, but everyone involved in the forum battle.
Yep, amazing work, everybody. The Backseat Drivers Council, I loved watching the politeness of the exchange among everybody. This forum people, they're amazing. I love them all.
And are you going to be doing more forum battles in the future?
I should hope so. I think that we are almost ready for the next segment of the Cravenlands story, because as you've seen, somebody came to save the day, and now we're going to follow the story of that dude on his own, and we'll probably put soon to the test as well.
Say no more. Say no more. No more spoilers. No more spoilers. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. We will sign off there. Thanks to Piteglio for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you for more content soon to come.
Bye, people.
See you later.